this the other day in a short, but I've got a few cracks in it here. It's about 9 inches across, thereabouts. I'm going to try to turn most of these cracks away. I want this as pristine as possible. I really don't do that many pristine turnings because the wood I have isn't pristine enough, but I'm going to try to get this one done. That I was lucky with the ash, that came out nice, but we'll see. If it's got a little crack here and there, it's no big deal. But the bark was coming loose at the edge. Again, the time of year this came down is partially to blame for that, but it looks pretty tight here where I've made my bandsaw cuts. So I'm going to try to keep the bark on if I can. So I'm going to start turning it this way. Face shield on, about 750 RPM. That's a good start. When I made this, when I cut this in half, inside here was about 24% humidity or moisture content. So it read on my gauge, but we'll see what happens. The bark's holding on nice. I don't know how deep those go. I don't know if I'm going to be able to turn those out or not. I've got it about round, not quite, a little bit more to go. That's about that far, that's about that. That'll be all right. Okay, it is round now, so I'm going to start working on this. First I'm going to try to flatten this bottom some. It's not quite, I've got a little bit of a dip out here. One of the things that I did was I made sure that this bark lines up here and again over here. So both sides are at the same spot. So we're good. That's looking pretty good. It's a little higher on that side than it is this side, but that's because of that little dip there. Not too much we can do about that. That's about 900. That's good. Because I've got end grain here. I know this is pretty tough wood, so a tenon might work, but I really don't want to use a tenon. So I'm going to cut a mortise, but to do that I need to reform this tool so that I have a mortise making tool, and I'll show you that when I come back. Okay, so this is my mortise making tool. I've got a rough cutting edge on it, and the way it works is, and now I have tool clearance. So I'm not sitting up here with a tool anymore trying to cut my mortise. I've got this so that it will cut not quite sharp enough. It's basically just a special scraper. See how you're getting those really pretty scraper shavings? And the great thing about it, I've got a dovetail cut on it, so I just push it straight in. Now that should be a deep enough dovetail. Make sure the bottom is relatively flat, and it is. Got a little bit of tear out there. See if I can smooth that up some. Better. That'll be good enough. Now, because because I'm using a mortise at this stage of the game, I want to leave myself as much room here as I can. I want to leave more room here so that I'm avoiding split out. I can refine this later if I need to. Now I'll start working on that shape. See how we're looking on our cracks, because my goal is to try to turn those out. Oh, that's a big one. That may go a long way. That may go a long way. Let me get my moisture meter to tell you what it's looking like. This is showing 22. So if I turn this to thickness, it is going to move. And with those cracks the way they are, I think they're too big for me to get rid of. I think they're too deep for me to get rid of. I don't want to make this really, really small, but I can make it a little smaller. Right now I'm down to about 8 inches, 7 maybe. I just really can't go any smaller without losing the detail that I want on the top because of where this knot is. That's got some pretty grain. Okay, I've got a sharp edge on my 40/40. Let me see if I can get rid of some of that tear out. Well, that fixed it up there. Not down here yet. And that is way too wet to sand yet. Oh yeah, that's pretty. That's not bad at all. I think I need to turn it around, put it in the chuck, and do as much hollowing as I can. Then I can do the CA thing. Let me see if I can leave this up for a little bit just to help me feel better. I don't want to come out too much. This is why I had to stop where I did. Okay, I don't want to go any narrower than that, I don't think. I blew a chunk out. My only other option is after I turn it just to knock the bark all off, and I'm not going to be happy with that either. I've never turned wood this wet either, by the way. It cuts easy though. Okay, got another chunk out now. Let me contemplate this, I'll be back.
Well, so far being my first experience with wet wood, hadn't been a real good one. I don't want to go much deeper. I can go a little bit.
Oh no, I don't want to go any deeper. It's almost flat. Boy, that elm's got some really pretty grain. That's about as good as I'm gonna get it. I don't like the pieces missing. I may have to hand sand this whole thing. By hand sand, I mean power sand. Because if this warps overnight, and it probably will because of how wet it is, I'm not going to be able to sand it. It's between 1/4 and an 1/8 inch thickness, which is good. So here she sits till tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. I'm not going to put any CA inside here. It's got some black already there where it's seeped through, and that's okay. But I don't want to build up of it like I've got out here, because I have a plan for something I might do out here anyway. One way or another, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'll figure something out. Well, I found enough of the missing bark to be able to put it back together to my liking. I knew this was going to stain badly, so I think what I'm going to do, I've got this on the outside and it's warped pretty bad. I knew it would, but you can see the degree of wobble. It's out over 1/8 of an inch up here at the top. So I'm just going to leave it warped. I've sanded the outside to 150, and I'll sand it up through 400. And now I need to start sanding on the inside. I will show you what that's going to look like. I'm going to start with 80. So I've got the spindle locked, and I'm going to start with 80 and power sand like this. And I will do this all the way through 400. So when I get that done, I'll come back. And that's 600. I'll put some Mylan's sanding sealer on the inside. mainly so, well, it needs sanding sealer before the next treatment anyway, but I want to see what this elm looks like. Oh my goodness. Would you look at that? Can you see that, chatoyance? I can from this angle. It's crazy. Let that dry a few minutes and I'll put another coat on. Well, I got most of the raggedness out. I didn't get it all. Man, that's pretty. Now I got to finish sanding the outside to 400. I took this to 6 inside. I said I was going to go to 4. I lied. Now I'm not going to be able to spin this for the interior finish, so I've got to figure out what kind of finish I want to put on it. I'm going to let this dry for a little bit and I'm going to get back out here and sand this to 400. I'll come back. If, and there's no guarantees either direction, I had put sanding sealer on this, sanded it up some, put sanding sealer on the outside, then did the CA, it might not have stained so bad. There's no way I can sand deep enough to get that out. So I'm going to do something that some of you aren't going to like too much, but I got to do something. I'm going to try to sneak this out of the work line. This is what I always use back in uni. Now I can do one or two things. After I let this dry, I can sand it back with 400 and see what it looks like. If I don't like it, I can color it. So we'll see. Okay, I sanded that back some. I didn't want to sand it too much. Here goes the spearmint. That's Texan for experiment. And now I'm using regular old RIT dye. You can get it at Walmart or grocery store or just about anywhere. It's made for dyeing cellulose, cotton, which is cellulose. What's wood made of? Cellulose. People say you need these expensive aniline dyes, etc., or trans tints, and I've got some. And I'm just showing you don't have to use that expensive stuff to get a good job. Now I'm just blotting this yellow on in places sporadically. I'm not giving it a full coverage. I don't want to. I may go back with the yellow after a bit to do some blending. I just don't know yet. Now I'm going to use tangerine. Now I'm going to come back with my yellow and do some blending. Now some red. Now some aquamarine. Well, that's looking kind of like Dane's Veggie Smasher from last week, ain't it? And now some dark blue. Okay, I think that's enough dark blue. Go back to the teal. Now I'll blend it all some more with some more yellow. And I think we'll just let that dry. And I'll let this dry for a few hours. I am not going to sand this back. I will knock it back with a Scotch-Brite, white Scotch-Brite, which is the finest grit I have. Let me give you a tip. These three colors of Scotch-Brite pad: burgundy, gray, and white. This is the roughest. This is next, and this is about 400 grit. The white's about 400, the gray's about 3, and this is about 2. I'm going to put some Mylans on that, and I hope it don't make it run too bad. Alright, I'm going to let this dry one more time and knock it back with the Scotch-Brite. And then we'll turn it over and finish the bottom. Probably going to have to use my vacuum chuck if I can get a good enough hold with that knot in the middle. Okay, I've got this up here with my vacuum chuck. I'm going to have to leave the tailstock up as long as I can because it doesn't have a really secure hold on this. It's a little better, not much. So I'm still going to have to keep my tailstock up for as long as I can. Alright, that's 400, that's good enough. Now, I'll let that dry a few minutes, keep it under vacuum, and then hit it with my white Scotch-Brite one more time. I'm going to go over this outside a little bit once again. Now I'll go put it in the laser and cut my logo in here. I think that's looking pretty good. And then hit it again real quick with some 400. And then I think I'm going to spray this with lacquer. It needs to be shiny. Like I said, I'm using Def Clear Gloss. Start off with a nice thin coat. That looks good. We'll let that dry a half hour, come back, do it again, and I'll do the inside until I'm happy with it. Then I'll turn it over and we'll do the back. Okay, I've got the first coat of lacquer on the outside. Inside only took 2 coats. Outside's probably only going to take 2 as well. So after that dries, I'll put another coat on, or more if I need, and this thing will be done. So here it is, all finished. I'm sure it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's certainly not mine. But all in all, I think it looks pretty good. I'll put some stills up at the end. But the coloring on it is kind of cool. I need to let it cure for about a week or so before I buff it out. But it's pretty nice. There's some really cool chatoyance right in through here. It's pretty nice. I don't know if the camera's picking that up or not. But the figure in this elm is really, really pretty, and I like it. I wish the outside would have looked as good as this, but it just, because of the staining from the black CA, I couldn't get it sanded out. And there's some pretty cool figure you can see in through here too. You can see the figure through the dye in most of the places, and it's up close. It looks a whole lot better than it does at this distance. Got my logo engraved in the bottom, and see, you can see some of that figure there too. But like I said, I'll buff it out in a week or so and shine it up a little bit more, but all in all, I'm happy with it. So another turning done, finally. I've really been anxious to get back to the lathe. My next project is, it's going to be a turning of sorts, not exactly. I'm going to attempt to make a Beads of Courage box in time for me to take to SWAT to donate. It's going to be stave construction. There will be a little turning involved as well, but there's going to be some other surprises along the way, and I'll let you wait for that video to see that. But that's what I'm planning on starting next. Thanks again as always. I really appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.